I was listening to a sermon where the pastor was talking about, well, I can't remember specifically, but he used the analogy of a pearl, the formation process of a pearl, to make the point and draw the conclusion that um, we as humans have the ability to create something beautiful, even in the process of provocation, just like oysters do. Anchoring this in scripture, I'm reading Romans chapter 8, verse 18 in the ESV version, which says, and this is Paul writing. He says, I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing to the glory that will be revealed in us. And so, if you've ever wondered how pearls were formed, which is something that I always was interested in, but never took the jump to actually researching until this past week. And what I found was quite fascinating. See, pearls are they're valued, they're treasured things, they're treasured items, but they're not formed in the same way that other precious gems are. See, diamonds and gemstones, they're formed from being under intense pressure. Now, if you're not familiar with how pearls are formed, what happens is when the oyster comes into contact with some external environment that is not good for it, and when that gets inside, the oyster has a negative reaction to it because it's just not accustomed to it, or it's just not a good thing. What happens is because oysters do not have the built-in mechanism to remove and expel these foreign particles, what they do then instead is a very interesting method where they release a specific substance that covers whatever it is that has entered into their space, into the inside of their shell. Furthermore, it's quite an interesting process because it's not really a forcing that causes this beauty to happen. It's really a provocation in a sense, like being provoked almost. Like the concept of being provoked into doing something, but something that is higher, something that is of a higher standard to a higher level, rather than being provoked into negative behavior. Um, like think of when a time when you've been faced with a situation where you had the choice to react negatively, but you chose to do the Christ-like thing, the godly thing, the right living in love kind of thing. That is the oyster's response to something that has come into its space, into its sphere. And just like the oysters, we can be that to every single negative situation that comes up, to every single thing that shows up, even like in our day to day lives. When these external elements, these things happen, when we see it happening, we have a choice to choose how to respond. And since with some things, like it is with the oyster, they cannot get rid of this thing. It's just not going to go away. So, what they do, they adapt, they change their response, and instead of expelling it, which they can't do, they then produce something better, something that changes the form of whatever it is that has been placed in front of them. To reference the book of Galatians, where Paul describes the fruits of the Spirit, which love, joy, peace, kindness, patience, self control. These are all things that are good things that, in the pursuit of becoming the better version of yourselves, we ask for more of it from God. How we think it will go is that we'll just naturally be more patient right where we are with the way that our lives are set up right now. But how it usually is when we ask God for these, especially character anchored things, like to be more patient, what happens is a situation shows up where your patience gets tested, and now you have to go beyond the level of patience that you've been operating in up to this point. And more than that, you also have to now start applying and using these gifts in different settings and in different situations, to where if you're being patient at home or with a specific people, what happens is that sometimes patience, the need for patience, shows up in a different environment, in a place, in a different part of your life where you just were not expecting it, outside of where you usually would need to operate in patience. And that is just one example, because there's so many things that can be birthed within a person from the situations that show up in their lives. None of these, when they arrive, are comfortable, but they are blessings in disguise, because the Lord works all things together for our good. And so he's using even these trials and tests to create and produce something beautiful within us. Provocations through irritations. The scientific term used to describe these things that cause this reaction is an irritant. And an irritant, what an irritant is a substance or agent that causes some form of pain or physical discomfort. Saying it differently, an irritant is any agent or substance that causes trouble, creates inconveniences, or produces a feeling of annoyance. Now, these irritants come in a variety of forms. They can be external or internal, where it's caused by external things. So it has to do with, and it's being sourced, or the source of the problem is from other people. But it can also be internally sourced and internally healing, where, for example, like there's a behavior that is showing up that the state of an individual person is not desirable, is not favored, is not wanted, and it is the aim of that person to try and change it. These irritants can also be big things or small things. So it can range from argument or confrontation with one person or another person, or some big event, for example, a job falling through or an application failing. But it can also be small things, items being misplaced, or an appliance that stops working randomly and all of a sudden. Each of these things can create and cause that reaction where now what is really being tested is your response to it. And these irritants can be present for any duration of time. Some of them remain for a long, ongoing period, like over months or years, just a really long time. But some of them are just one-off events and standalone instances. But even in those, depending on where that happens, there can be such a huge and beautiful result that comes from it. Actually, I was actually watching a video a while back of one person's testimony of how they were on a bus out in public giving, just preaching about Jesus and sharing the word and the good news, sharing the gospel with others. And there was some form of confrontation. Moral of the story, it was the way that he reacted to that confrontation and that provocation that not only created something beautiful in that it changed the very person that reacted negatively in the first way, but it also caused a mindset shift and a great change in the people that were watching, because of the way that he showed up and the way that he responded to someone's negative reaction to him. See, he could have matched that person's negative reaction where it literally got violent, and he could have reacted in kind. But in true and quite Christ-like fashion, he set a higher standard and reacted from a higher place. He reacted from a position of love and understanding. Instead of getting violent and responding and reacting on that low level, he set a higher standard, and as a result, that person also changed, and the people around who were not directly involved but just watching and expecting it to go one way have now experienced a different worldview and a different way, and have received just a different picture of how to respond to these negative things when they come up, because they will happen. If a person lives long enough, they will come across these irritants, these things that cause pain, that produce physical discomfort, that upsets the natural balance of a person's life. All this to say that Blessings do not have to be pretty, because blessings can come from the most unlikely, the most provoking, the most irritating, uncomfortable, poking places. But even in the presence of provocation, even in the presence of a trial, something beautiful can be created. And even if it's not visible at first, it's created within, to where the character of a person is being formed, it's being shaped. And even with this entire process with the oyster, it takes years. And so we're just that constant building and building and changing of a character. Something beautiful is being created. When in the right environment, when revealed, in the same way how the shell of a clam or oyster opens up and a pearl is revealed within, that can happen also with the character of a person, where even if it doesn't show up immediately, even if it's not visible to others immediately, it's still there and it's still present. And at some later time, it can be revealed and it can be appreciated, to where now this beautiful character, this beautiful soul of this beautiful person that has been formed and shaped through adversity is now revealed, and the beauty of it is being witnessed by others. And just like it is with that guy's testimony, so can it be with anyone else's. It is the beauty of your character that causes others to change as well, where your character brings the light and brings beauty into the lives of others and those who witness it, which is exactly what Christ calls us to be, the light of the world. But beauty must first happen, and it must first be produced and formed within.